Hello Orchid friends, how are you? Welcome back to my channel. If this is your first time watching my video, my channel is all about orchids. From what orchids I have, how I grow them, my thoughts on certain orchid topics, to what orchids in my collection are blooming, etc. So if you want to follow along my orchid hobby adventure, please consider subscribing to my channel and turn on the notification. Today in this video, we're going to look at my Phalaenopsis Purple Martin. I've had this one for probably almost 3 years, and last year was the first time that it bloomed under my care. I've had this one since it was a near blooming size plant. Last year it bloomed with 2 spikes, and this year it only has 1 spike, but it has been growing very vigorously. So let's go back in time and look at how it progressed. Beginning of February 2019, it was showing signs of active growth, both in roots area but also in its leaf production. It had its older spike for quite some time, and then eventually it started to die back and focusing its energy on growing roots and leaves. And then pretty soon, around end of March 2019, that was when the newer flower spike was really taking off, and about beginning of April, that's when this orchid started to really trying to put out buds. I mean, it took its sweet time, but it was fine with me totally, because the first year that I had this orchid, I already experienced the slowness, right? The slow pace of this orchid trying to mature its spike and then buds. So this year I knew it's gonna take this orchid quite a bit of time. I have other orchids that would grow spikes quickly and then put out buds even faster, but for this one I know it was gonna be not as fast, so I was trying to tell myself to be patient. However, in addition to patience, there were quite a few things that I was trying to make sure I provide right conditions for this orchid. For example, number 1, obviously you have to give enough feed. So fertilizer is also a must, but I usually use quarter strength on all my orchids, most of my orchids anyway, but fertilizer, that's one thing. And number 2 is light exposure. And here I don't say sunlight because I know some people don't necessarily have a great location for orchid to allow natural sunlight without any artificial light or assistance from artificial light, I should say. So I think enough light exposure is important, whether it's natural sunlight or artificial light from your LED light bulbs or light strips. Personally, I've had both, and I don't always turn them on. It just really depends on how I see the orchids, grow and in a given season. Sometimes I notice that I use my LED lights more in the winter time, the autumn season, because obviously summertime, springtime, you tend to have a little bit more light exposure for your orchid. But it also depends on how big of a window you have and whether your window is tinted with UVA, UVB blocking mechanism, because traditional window glass with no UV protection or no UV coating, things like that, you probably get more light, more light source versus more energy efficient windows. Sometimes they do block out a little bit more light. So that's just something that you have to look into. I used to only have LED lights that are rounded with light bulbs. And well, I shouldn't say light bulbs because it's not a bulb. It's a small LED panel that's flat, but then they make it look like a light bulb. And I have it mobile on my growing shelf because depending on which orchid area or which certain orchids need more additional light, I may just move that. closer to those orchids. But I have since also purchased LED light strips that I can, I guess, installed onto at the bottom of each rack to be able to provide lights to the orchids on the next level. Now I can tell you, I do not personally use any LED panel, and by panel I mean, you see some people, they buy those square LED lights with lots of LED chips or strips at the bottom, because once you put that on there, because I have a lot of LED light bulbs on the ceiling and shining down onto my growing rack as well, and I really don't want to waste those. But if you installed LED panel boxes at the bottom of each shelf, you're really blocking additional light source from coming above. So I don't use those. So I use skinny LED light strips, still meant for LED for plant growth, but I allow them to be a few inches apart, so that way they're not completely blocking light source from above. I know it's probably very difficult for you to visualize what I'm trying to tell you, but if I have a chance, if I have time, I will try to take some photos and maybe even some video clips to show you exactly what I'm talking about. But since I just thought, since I'm talking about light sources, might as well include this into this video, just to get you thinking about, okay, if you don't have enough light exposure for your orchid, what are some of your options? Obviously, move them closer to your windows, maybe get a bigger window, I don't know, or change out your glass, things like that for your autumn winter season. But another great way, cheaper way, without moving, without making your windows bigger or changing a new glass of your window, is, purchase a couple LED grow light for your plant. And they have, LED technology has advanced so much that the prices are so cheap. And in fact, a lot of these manufacturers are from China, so their pricing is rather competitive. So just go on to Amazon, you will be able to find lots of varieties. And my personal preference is the LED, single LED light that's mobile, so I can move them around with clips. I can clip onto certain things and have it shine onto certain orchids if I want to. But then the skinny LED light strips, not the panel, not the square boxes, those strips, allows me to have more flexibility in terms of where I want it without having to block light sources from above, from my LED lights on the ceiling, for example. Now let's come back to this orchid. Purple Martin is one of my favorite orchids, and in fact, when I was still very new to this orchid hobby, it was one of the orchids that I really wanted to have, and I finally got one, so I was very happy. Last year, it bloomed for the very first time with 2 spikes. I did a video on it. It's somewhere in my channel. I can't remember when I post that video, but this year it came out with a long spike with all these lovely bloom. It's fragrant. It's not a strong fragrance, but in the morning it's pretty. You can smell it from within about a feet. You don't have to put for this one. I don't have to put my nose close to this orchid to smell the fragrance, but it's not a very strong fragrance compared to my other orchids, but it's still fragrant. The care I give this orchid, by the way, this one is in semi-hydro and have roots into the reservoir. So with fertilizer, I give it quarter string fertilizer pretty much every week, every watering. And the wet dry cycle for this orchid with quarter cup of the amount of water is about 7 days, and then about 10 to 14 days in winter time. So overall, this orchid is pretty low maintenance for me, and I'm really happy with its performance this year. And just to give you some idea, you may see more of this orchid or more video on this orchid later, because at the end of May 2019 it was not even done blooming. This is all I have for you today. If you like this video, please give it a thumbs up, and if you would like to get more orchid related videos from my channel, please subscribe and turn on the notification. I want to wish you happy growing, and I will talk to you in my next video. Ciao!